Good morning, and welcome to the September 2016 edition of the Marks Group GoldMine Tips and Tricks webinar. We put on these tips and tricks webinars once a month. You can always visit by going to www.marksgroup.net. What are we looking at today? Well, hopefully a couple of different things. We're going to hopefully look at using colors and expressions, which is kind of fun. It's a fun thing to do. We're going to look at partial email quoting, one of them stupid pet tricks which you might not have known about. And we're going to look at how to use some email templates and some really good stuff there. So I'd love to go ahead and get started. And we're going to look at, first of all, using colors and expressions. Okay, what do I mean by color and what do I mean by expression? Well, simply put, we can change the color of any field on the record. We can change the label color and the data value color. This is easy to do. We're going to right click. We're going to deal with our source field here. We're going to right click and go to properties. And from here we go to color. And the simplest thing that we can do is just select a solid color for both the label and the data. So in this case, maybe I want to make the label something red. I find it very easy to put data models into practice by using color codes here. So we might be able to say to the end user, listen, if the field is in red, please fill it out. Just please fill it out if you can. If the field is, say, in blue, we'd love to have that information, but you know what? We really don't care. I mean, we'd love to know what kind of product they're interested in, but really we got to know where they came from. And we got to have a name, and we got to have a company, and we got to have a main phone. So just concentrate on that. Anything else is gravy. So that's a nice way to put things like required fields into practice. Of course, there is this ability in the field properties to require data entry, which is another tip for another day, but that can be a slippery, dangerous slope. If you require the data entry here in the security tab, it is, wow, is it required. It is so required it will prevent people from leaving records if the field is blank. So if I had records in my GoldMine with a blank source and I make this field required, if any of my poor end users land on one of these older records with a blank source, they won't be able to navigate away until they fill the source field in. What's worse is that they're not going to understand that the source field is required. They're just going to know that a field is required. It doesn't even tell you what. So again, just be very mindful of that. You know, this is always going to happen to the end user when they're on the phone and they're supposed to be filling in the fields, right? So do yourselves a huge favor. Reserve these sharp tools for things like, customer numbers, things like that, things that truly need to be filled in for like integration with accounting to work, for example. I find a much better result is sometimes realized by just changing the label color to red. Okay, so what we essentially want to do is change the color programmatically based upon what the data value is. And in this case, we're going to pick on direct mail. Oh, I just dropped my mouse. Oh, nose. Back here, mouse. All right. That was exciting. Okay, so what I want to do is instead of just picking, I'm going to change my label color back to normal first of all. There we go. And my data color is going to be an expression. And the expression I'm going to use is the immediate if statement. I want to talk about this just for a quick moment before we start to actually use it. The immediate if statement is a way to test if then else with a DBase expression. If you guys want to know more about DBase or XBase expressions, go ahead and Google up GoldMine DBase or GoldMine XBase. You'll learn more than you ever thought was possible to be out there. So the immediate if is a way to say, if this thing is true, then do thing A, otherwise do thing B. And it snaps a little better into focus if we go ahead and actually paste the code in here. This code is available on the blog post at www.marksgroup.net, so always feel free to use that. Remember, real programmers only have to do it once, and then they just copy it around forever. So essentially, my IIF, or immediate if function, takes three parameters. The first parameter rather, is the expression to be tested. If my contact one source, when we'll get into contact one and stuff in a minute, if my source field equals direct mail, then I'm going to be 255. Otherwise, I'm going to be 0. Now, 255 just happens to be the color red. Because if I select the color red from here, it kicks out that integer of 255 for the expression. So if I wanted to use other colors, I could just to test them out, just to see what the number is, you would select the color from here and then use whatever number it kicks out. 255 is red. This shade of green happens to be 65280 or whatever. So let's go ahead and change that back. So we want to just deal with red. We want to say if the source is direct mail, make yourself red. Otherwise, keep yourself black or 0. How does this work? Well, now I'm going to go ahead and change my source to direct mail. And there we go. So all kinds of things are possible with color expressions. Again, that was a right click into my properties, into my color, and into my expressions. Okay, let us move right along to partial email quoting. What do I mean by that? I mean that when I'm replying to a GoldMine email, which I can find in my GoldMine email center, which the nicest shortcut to get to is the F5 key, thusly, if I'm reading a GoldMine email message now, if I reply to it, I get the entire message by default. A lot of times in my line of work, I only have to reply to the most technical parts of the email. Things about, what servers are we going to use and what are the workstation requirements. So in order to just reply to the appropriate part of the email, what I can actually do is just select part of the email message and then hit reply. Now, sometimes my GoldMine does that, and I don't know why. If I select only part of my email, oh, I know why. It likes to lock up. That never happens, right, guys? Wowee. Bear with me. Back to my email center, back to my email message. If I only partially select part of the email text and then hit reply, I only get the part that I selected as my auto quote for the reply. And again, for some of you, this might not work. Some of you might want to preserve the entire email chain going back from its inception, and I can really understand why. Other people out there might just be technical guys like me who only need to reply to the appropriate parts of the email. And this is a nice way to kind of get it going without having to go ahead and then remove large swaths of the email with a selection and delete. Nice little stupid pet trick there for you. Let's go ahead and move right on. Email templates. What fun. Okay. To get to our templates in GoldMine, we're going to hit our go-to menu and down to document templates. GoldMine templates come in two kinds. There's documents and emails. Documents would be things like spreadsheets and Word templates, and email is anything email. Now keep in mind, when you work within the Document Management Center, which is what we're in here, you're always going to have this user drop down in play. And this appears in a lot of different areas in GoldMine, and what it is a way for every user to kind of have their own stuff, which is great in theory, but in practice it introduces an insane amount of confusion into your GoldMine universe, or into the GoldMine universe of your typical new user. So just be very mindful. If you're working within your Document Management Center and you can't find the thing you're after, or if an end user is telling you of a thing that you can't see but they can see, make sure you're both looking at the same user. The public area is a great place to stay, I'm here to tell you. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a new template. How do we get that going? We're going to right click and select new, or we're going to use these buttons at the top. To be honest, I've probably clicked them maybe twice in my life, because I know as a GoldMine user that a right click is truly the way to its own heart. So we go ahead and right click and say new, and the first thing we want to do within our email template editor is turn on rich text. We want to turn on that HTML because, of course, what that's going to give us is down here this rich text toolbar. So you see here it disappears and reappears. We want that. That's going to give us colors and fonts and underlines and italics and hyperlinks and pictures and lions and tigers and bears and all that good stuff. And for those geeks out there, what it's also going to give you is the ability to reveal the source code. Anyone that understands what this set is currently growing fangs and drooling into their own coffee, because what you're able to do now is create your templates in something like heavy duty, like Cold Fusion, or even like something stupid like Front Page to make it really super nice. And as long as it's standard HTML, it'll work here. I actually have a couple of clients that do use Cold Fusion to make GoldMine email templates. I digress. So the first thing we want to do is give our template a subject line or a name, because when you give it a subject line in GoldMine, this is actually also the name of the template. It is also what the recipient is going to see. So whatever you put in here has to straddle this weird dual role of being technical enough for you to understand it as an end user, but yet palatable to the recipient is like a marketing email. So just be mindful. Now, you're more than welcome to change the subject line after the fact, but you really want to do that for like a couple hundred emails? In my line of work, I like to say if I have to do it more than 12 times, there has to be a better, more automatic way to do it. Okay, so let's go ahead and give this a nice, succinct subject line. This is going to be September tickler for HAL 9000. So we want to call this Checkout Great Deals on HAL 9000 in September. How professional is that? Okay, and again, that is what the template is going to be named. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the actual template, the body text. So, GoldMine uses field codes to represent things in the email. In this case, this field code that it kind of kicks out there for everyone to see, brand new to the scene, to confuse everyone, is this cursor code. Now, what the cursor code? We know it's a code, first of all, because it's encapsulated by these little less thans. And I wonder why it's been doing that. There we go. I don't know why my title card down there has been malfunctioning, but it's been driving me nuts. Okay, the cursor code. We know it's a code because it's encapsulated in these less thans and greater thans, right? Now what the cursor code does is that when the end user selects a template and they click into the email body, that is where they're going to start typing. So this is a nice way to get you started, say, below your dear first name, which we're going to do right now. So any template should start with a dear first name, right? So it's going to be dear space, and I can go to insert field here, contact details, and first name, comma, and then blah, blah, blah. Let's go ahead and save that template. Very good. There's our template now in the public area. We're going to go ahead and right-click, and we can edit that at any time we want. To test this template, super easy. We go to any record at all with an email address. And if we go to start making an email to that record, we're going to grab that template from our subject dropdown. And there it is. And when we select it, it's going to grab all of the current values that it should grab from the currently selected contact record. Remember, GoldMine is like always obsessed with that current contact record? Well, here it is again. This is a great way to test the output of a template before you queue it up for a couple thousand people or whatever you're going to do with it. Okay, so that is nice and all. But what if I want to insert some meaningful things into this template? What if I want to insert their source or their industry, let's say? How do I do that? I'm not sure. Let's go back to our template. Go back to a right-click and edit. And, okay, we want to insert a field. I'm looking, contact, first name, dear, title, address. This is pretty much all you get here, which is frustrating because you can actually insert any field from the contact record onto this template. They just don't give you a nice way to do it. So what we're going to have to do is become GoldMine geeks. Are you ready? I'm ready. You got to know two things. How to insert any one of these fields into an email template. You got to know two things. One thing is where the table is, the field lives, and the name of the field. How do we determine that? Anything above this top divider, anything above it, comes from the Contact 1 table. Contact 1. Anything in the Fields tab down here comes from the Contact 2 table. This is going to make a lot of sense in a moment. So to get at those values, we're going to go ahead and remove that cursor field. To get at those values, we actually have to manually create a field code, and we're going to do it in the following way. So let's say we're going to use our source. So we want to say, thanks for checking us out on blah, 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 right? Whatever the source is. Or via, I guess would be a prettier way to say it. Thanks for checking us out via source. So we're going to go ahead and make a field code by hand with a less than. And now we need to know the table name because the field code is table name and then field name. And then we end our field code with the two greater thans. So what I'm actually doing is saying table, and then I give it this hyphen greater than, and I think of it as a little arrow. So I give it the table name, and then a little arrow, and then the column name or the field name. Now, source happens to be source, so this is going to work. But you always, okay, remember you got to have two things. You need the table name, and because this field is on the top half of the record, I know it's in the Contact 1 table. And you need the field name. How do I know that's the field name? If I go back to my contact record, I'm going to right-click on my field and go to Properties. And what I'm after is that name in database. That name in database is what you want to use whenever you're doing anything clever with expressions. Like earlier when we were doing colors with expressions or email templates. You got to know the name in the database. In this case, source happens to be source, so we lucked out. So that should work. Let's test it. We just have to save that template, and we go to create a new email, and we drop this down, and then select our template, and there we go. There's our source. So we're GoldMine experts now. Let's take it a step further. I want to do industry now. I want to tell him what his industry is. How do I do that? Well, again, I got to know two things. Table name, well, it's in the Contact 1 table. It has to be because, well, not necessarily, but as a general rule of thumb, anything on the top half is Contact 1. So it's Contact 1 table. I got to know my field name, so I'm going to double check. I'm not sure if that's industry or not. So I'm going to right click, go to Properties. Aha! It's actually the Key 2 field. Anyone who's familiar with GoldMine will know about keys 1 through 5. That's a conversation for another day. But just this is why you check your field names. You're going to right click, go to Properties, check your name in database for your own sanity's sake. So to get my industry, I actually want to grab Key 2. How do we do that? We'll go back to our template, and we'll right-click and edit, and we'll say things must be tough there in the blah, blah, blah industry. And then we'll hand code a field, and we'll start our code with two less thans, and the Contact 1 table. Remember, it's table, and then our little arrow, and then our field name, Key 2. And then we close our code. Make sure our spacing is correct. Looks right to me. We save our template. We'll go ahead and test that template. And bam. There we go. Now, the final step. Bringing it all the way home. If I want to grab anything that I've created, a user-defined field, anything in the Fields tab, again, comes from the Contact 2 table. So we know the table, but we got to know the field name. In this case, in my Fields tab, I have a couple of date fields that I created. And what these might represent are marketing pipeline milestones. I find this to be a nice lightweight method to actually model a pipeline instead of having to get into opportunities and things like that, which really is, wow, it did it again, is really a conversation for another day. I got to figure out what hotkey is doing that. That's embarrassing. Okay. So I want to insert my interest confirmed here. So I'm going to right click, go to properties, and the name in the database is U Step 1. Every user-defined field begins with the letter U. It's just a GoldMine thing. So in order to get that interest confirmed date, we're going to go back to our document, or back to our template rather. And your interest was confirmed on, how creepy would that be, right? And again, we're going to hand code this field, give it 2 less thans, and this is the contact to table, right? Because it's in the bottom half of the record. So contact to, and our little arrow, and then U Step 1. And we save that bad boy. What's doing it? Save. That is bizarre. Hold on, guys. I'm sorry. I got to check this out. I have to be honest. This is like the 9th take I've done of this. Because this thing has kept on happening. And I haven't been able to figure out why. I figured I was doing something wrong. What the heck? Sorry, guys. Just give me one more moment here. This is... I have to restart. Anyway, that's how to insert any field on the contact record into your email template. Okay, again, that was our go-to document templates. We're going to play around here. And just so you know, you can also use templates for cool things like your automatic reply template for like a new message to a reply, or from a forwarded message, or to a forward, actually. And this is a nice way to get really nice looking GoldMine email signatures and not have them be plain text. Actually have them be nice, rich HTML. Well, guys, we're just about out of time for today. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, I'm always looking for that next tip and trick, so please feel free to reach out to me at justin@marshgroup.net. Thanks so much for showing up, and have a great day.